Abhav, you can start now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll just wait for a minute or two so that other people can join.
Yes.
Swadesh, Sanjeev, if you can post it that we are starting. Hi, Swadesh.
Yeah, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Everything fine.
Good. Good to know everything
Thank
is
you.
fine.
Nice to see you.
Say, you are not seeing me. Let me switch on my video.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, here. Hi. Okay, good to see you guys. I have my neighborhood building getting demolished, so there's going to be a whole lot of crackling noise in between while we are doing this class. So we kind of have to bear with that. Just can you put it in the group that we are starting? I'm seeing some new students. Pooja, hi. Namka, hi. Pooja, your I think connection is kind of not very good. Your voice is breaking. Okay, no problem. No problem. You can communicate via chat. What happened to Swadesh there? Okay. What happened to Shrestha? She kind of dropped off.
Afternoon, sir.
Hi, Shrestha. How are you?
I'm good, sir.
Okay.
So I had one question today.
Okay.
I was writing the assignments and I faced a problem. We had discussed different kinds of diasporas, but I don't remember writing anything about the idealist concept of diaspora. Can you explain that?
The idealist concept of diaspora. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what we will do is I will just go through it, and then possibly we will speak on the mail, or in case required, then we will come next time and talk about it.
Okay, sir. I'll text you as well on mail also. I'll just let you know.
We can chat on the mail.
Okay.
And if need be, then next week when we take this particular, now we are starting on with the global diaspora case studies, and we are doing this Asian diaspora. So today we are doing the East Asian. Next time we are doing the South Asian. So in between, then I prepare and accordingly tell it to everybody.
Okay, sir.
Okay, Shesha.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's start on this Asian diaspora, and we are today talking about the East Asian diaspora. And we will study on what's the meaning of East Asian diaspora, its role and economic contribution, as well as its cultural contribution, how things are changing, and these are happening because this unit focuses on 5 East Asian countries: China, Korea, Philippines. We have been talking about Philippines a lot. We did talk about Chinese diaspora in India specifically. We haven't at all talked about Japanese and Vietnamese diaspora. So this unit looks at that. And there is a very interesting thing, which is the rise of China in terms of a global order. So today, one of the things which some commentators are talking about with respect to the Ukraine-Russian conflict is the fact that possibly it's a shadow boxing between US and China in terms of global dominance. See, these are all points of views. So you might have a different point of view, but these are points of view which is happening. And obviously, there is this global competition between America and China in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of, it is basically global dominance. And we are seeing all these conflicts which are rising. China's rising manufacturing capabilities and technological advancements. And in this, how the Chinese diaspora plays a vital role. Incidentally, in terms of remittances, the largest remittances are coming out of India and China in terms of Indian diaspora and Chinese diaspora. In fact, the Indian diaspora's remittances have crossed the $100 billion mark. So it's a very interesting thing how this thing is playing out. In fact, many years back, a decade back, there was this talk between India vis-a-vis China as two Asian tigers who will come up. But obviously, we are seeing that China has taken a much bigger lead in terms of this particular thing. Chinese, Korean, Filipino, Japanese, Vietnamese diaspora benefit their home economy, as is any diaspora, through remittances and spread soft power through cultural and civilization exchange. Also, today, the presence of global diasporas on global platforms. So, if you see the recent elevation or election of the Singaporean president who has an Indian descent. So, each diaspora, and especially as I said, the story of human history is a story of migration. Migration was always there. Then the diaspora studies came about. The diasporas, and with this interconnection, the globalization and the internet and the convergence of media, today diaspora plays a very important part in the host country as well as the home country. It becomes a very interesting how it influences, everything influences each other. So let's look at that. East Asian is a geographical connotation referring to the sub-region of Asian continent covering China, Korea, Philippines, Japan, Vietnam, and others, Cambodia, etc. Widely diverse, which today all regions are, but this particular regions is diverse in terms of culture, people, ethnicity, language. East Asian diaspora is the largest overseas population settled on a permanent or temporary basis. And we will see how these diasporas happened. Why did they happen? Large-scale emigration from East Asia took place after the end of Second World War. Remember, this was the time when there was this major disruption in the global order in terms of the colonial powers collapsing. There was a lot of nations getting their independence. And in all this tumult, there was obviously a lot of migration. Emigration en masse from East Asia to Americas resulted from political instability, economic downfall after the Second World War, and ethnic tension. And again, you will see that inevitably we see that all these instabilities are happening periodically in terms of political instability, economic instability. During the 60s and 70s, the Vietnam War resulted in a massive number of political refugees to USA, Brazil, Mexico, Canada, Japan, and China. So that's about the East Asian diaspora. So let's start with the Chinese diaspora. So in some of the earlier units, we have looked at how the Chinese diaspora came to India, how Chinatown was formed. A lot of these Chinese came as traders. They have, in fact, one of the city near Kolkata, or a place near Kolkata, was named after a Chinese. Chinese diaspora refers to anyone who personally or whose ancestors migrated from China to a foreign country. That's law in 2004. Chinese diaspora is also known as overseas Chinese. Third largest diaspora spread worldwide as per the International Migration Stock 2019. So it's a huge diaspora. And rural-urban migration, wealth polarization, expansion of gap between affluent, which we see is across nations, across communities, across states. The same thing is happening when we look at Indian diaspora. Again, rural-urban migration, wealth polarization, expansion of gap between affluent and poor. In 2010, an estimated 43 million Chinese origin people live in 148 countries. This is 2010. Things have changed after that. In fact, China brought in a new immigration policy in 2012, which was the entry and the exit policy, which led to a lot of movement of outsiders inside China. Before the Cultural Revolution in China in 50s, many Chinese emigrated within Asia. With economic reforms in 70s, Chinese people began to emigrate in North America. Europe and Australia. And these industrial countries sought laborers, especially unskilled. We have seen earlier in one of the units how these Chinese came to America and they were called sojourners. The Chinese diaspora present generation is primarily engaged in economic and the whole nature of the diaspora has changed. In terms of primarily engaged in economic, information and technology sector, investment and educational activities. And the four main destinations, namely US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. This research has been done by Boston and Young in 2016. Things would have again changed from 16 to 23. Remember, now the disruptions are happening more frequently, and anything or everything then becomes a disruption. So the earliest record of Chinese immigrants who settled in foreign land was found between Tang Dynasty 7th century and Ming Dynasty 16th century. And these earlier migrants were mainly Buddhist immigrants who visited Japan, India, and Indonesia for pilgrimage. Subsequently, we've seen how the Chinese came as traders. So the Chinese diaspora and their overseas settlement can be divided into 4 phases. Why is it coming? Okay. The first phase was overseas Chinese went to West Asia for trading purpose, what we have talked in the previous units. Second phase, between 16th and 19th century, Chinese traders, artisans, miners, overseas, primarily in Asia, Philippines, Java. So this was the second phase. Now, again, remember, this has been defined by a set of people, by a set of scholars, based on research, which is Lai in 2004, the third phase between 1910 to 1960s, Industrial Revolution, essential role in Chinese immigration patterns. The destination included Australia, New Zealand, South Pacific Island, Americas, including US, Canada, Cuba. So they have kind of distributed across the world. The fourth phase was post-16. The global human movement was primarily influenced by global connectivity. We are also seeing that as connectivity becomes better, internet becomes a great source of enabling people, a whole lot of migrations are happening to and fro. The new city centers, especially developed society, became the new destinations. Inevitably, people migrate for a better opportunity, for a better life. They want to escape from strife. They want to escape from political uncertainty. It's the generic rule across the world. So there were 4 phases, and over the decades, the Chinese community residing overseas has invested in China. Includes developing an overseas business community from China in strategically essential regions like Africa and Asia. So you will find a huge Chinese diaspora in Africa today. In fact, I was seeing a lot of videos on TikTok about Chinese people in Africa teaching Africans Chinese. So it was quite a interesting set of videos. So I picked up this news item from Melbourne Asia Review, where it talks about Chinese diaspora engagement policy and its powerful effect outside its border. Associate Professor Yan Tan. And you can look at this Asia Review, Melbourne Asia Review. It's available. It's got an ISSN number. And I picked up some very salient points in this particular Asia Review. One of the points I picked up was, according to strategic plan, State Council of China in 2015 called Made in China 2025. Now you also are seeing that countries are borrowing concepts from each other. For example, Made in India was launched in September 2014. So, countries are borrowing ideas from each other. And all the countries today are realizing that diaspora becomes a very important part of a global outreach. Remember, in a geopolitical situation, diaspora becomes a very important part. Sustain its economic growth, safeguard national security, boost global political and economic influence. And everybody is boosting those political and economic influences remember at the end of the day, it's a geopolitical situation. Also from this particular review, in terms of cultural engagement, Communist Party called all diasporas to help realize the great rejuvenation of Chinese nation. See, again, interestingly, in spite of the migration, there is a certain amount of narrative based on nationalism. So remember when we talked about gender and diaspora, and we looked about how women's or women bodies or women were looked at from the nationalistic point of view in terms of spreading of culture and so on and so forth. By telling Chinese stories, assisting economic development of China, upholding the greater national interest. Now, that's a very interesting thing which is happening. So, irrespective of globalization, there is, and as we have talked about, globalization should actually reduce nationalism in terms of boundaries or barricades, but the globalization on one part has brought in a counter narrative of nationalization on another. So they seem to be operating simultaneously. The same thing what we talk about science and religion. Science should have effectively reduced the dependence on religion, but we are seeing as science is growing, religion seems to be also growing. So these are working parallelly. The call elucidates the scope of China's current engagement policy, goes beyond domestic economic development and extends to transnational political, which is what, if you see, even India is talking about social, diplomatic, and cultural domain. When India is talking about yoga, it's talking about a cultural domain. Two fundamental trends or challenges. This is also a part of the same article. Two fundamental trends or challenges in China's diaspora engagement. Rise of recruiting highly skilled talent, replacing an earlier practice of attracting foreign business. So what they are trying to do is they are trying to do a reverse, migration of qualified Chinese back to China to be able to, help them, grow. The move from tapping diaspora capital investment for economic development to emphasizing diaspora as promoting soft power. The diaspora is looked at in terms of global outreach, in terms of soft power, in terms of negotiating, engaging on a global stage. So this is what I brought out from the same article. You can pick up that article on the net. It's available. I just show you. This is the Melbourne Asia Review. If you search on that, if you search on the headline, Chinese Diaspora Engagement Policy, you'll come to the whole article and you can read this up. So an analysis of, again, whatever it's from another article, an analysis of Chinese diaspora engagement policy in the Z era by Sheng Ding, Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania. They're talking about indigenizing international communications to improve China's national image, jump-starting immigration reforms. And I said this 2012 entry-exit policy. In fact, I was reading another article where they are now made it easier for immigrants coming into China to, the visa requirements have been very much simplified in terms of spouses, in terms of specific countries like France, America, so that they are able to get international talent to be able to improve their manufacturing and other capabilities, strengthening education exchange to shape the diasporic identity of overseas Chinese. So that's another article that I came across. Let's come on to the Korean diaspora. So modern history of Korean diaspora began in 1910, forced annexation of an undivided Korea by Japan after the Russian-Japan War. Koreans were taken to Japan as indentured labor or employed as laborers in Japan by the imperial government. Also mass immigration to Central Asia and China. So essentially 1910 is what they are documenting the Korean diaspora movement. So it was actually Russia which was occupying it when Japan took over. And then after that, the Korean War between 50 and 53. which between North Korea, which made Korea divide between North Korea and South Korea. South Korea being supported by America and North Korea being supported by Russia. This was during the Cold War time when US, and there was no Russia, there was USSR, which were competing on a global stage. So emigration from Korean Peninsula to other part of the world become popular and ally of, because South Korea ally of US, they benefited. And after that, Korea also introduced new policies that helped Koreans move to US. In fact, there are a lot of Koreans in the US. In case you are interested to watch cinema, there is Ken's Store, I think. It's a series on Netflix or one of these popular channels, where there is this Korean immigrant family in Canada, and you know how they go about. That's a story of a Korean and an Indian immigrant family, both diasporas in Canada. As per Republic of Korean government, an estimated 7.5 million Korean diaspora is spread over 193 countries. Most significant in United States, followed by China and Japan. There is a very small percentage of Koreans in India. As per 2017, remittance flow to South Korea accounted for 6,332 million. The Indian remittance, remittance by Indian diaspora has already crossed $100 billion. So that's, you can see the scale. The Korean government uses its diaspora population to improve country's economic competitiveness. Trades more with countries having a significant ethnic Korean population. That's a very interesting way to look at diaspora engagement. International initiatives like World Korean Economic Convention, Overseas Korean Traders Association, foster business linkages and networking between Korea and diaspora. So much so that 2017, more than 600 Korean small and medium-sized business inked agreement with Korean entrepreneurs living abroad to boost connectivity. Well, this is a very interesting thing, to be able to get the diaspora to invest in the home country. In fact, Korea has begun to import low-cost labor from ethnic Koreans in China and Central Asia. And when I looked at this sentence, I said, let me do a Google search to figure out what this is. And I came across this Reuters articles, which says as workforce shrinks, Korea struggles to embrace immigration. Now, obviously, if workforce is shrinking and they are trying to embrace immigration, I'm sure in the care industry, there would be a lot of Filipinos and other caregivers who are moving to Korea. Seoul is a place to make money, but not a place to call home, which we have seen again in earlier units, that in spite of the fact that the diaspora have become naturalized in the host country, they don't still feel at home. Or even when they are in a host country and they want to come back home, the home feels different to them. So that's a Reuters news report. And if you notice, this is a December 2013 article. And then, of course, the K-pop. World over now, the K-pop is ruling, short for Korean popular music. In fact, you'll be surprised, but an Indian music channel, the 94.3 radio channel in India, has a small slot called the K-pop slot, where they are teaching Korean words and facts about K-pop. So K-pop has become a fad across the world. This is in terms of cultural export and a soft power. We have something called Gangnam style. And refers to lifestyle associated with the Gangnam region of Seoul, where people are trendy, hip, and exude a certain supposedly class. So the whole dance form, which took the whole world by surprise, and it became a rage worldwide in terms of Gangnam style, is from the Gangnam region of Seoul. Look at how this brand, the Korean brand, was exported. In India, we are already knowing Hyundai, we know there was Matisse, which no longer is there, but we know Kia, which are again Korean products. We have talked about the Filipino diaspora a lot in the earlier units. We have looked at the fact that how Filipino domestic care and nurses in terms of caregiving and Philippines as a country has a policy on exporting of labor outside, and in fact their whole economy, a large part of the economy works on remittances. But actually, during the Spanish colonization, the local population emigrated to Spain, Mexico, and parts of South Asian Asia. Uh, uh, the US, there was a war between Spain and US for the control of Philippines. And once the US took over, it led to a lot of outflow to US. Filipino diaspora has reached 5.4 million in 2020. As a result of many people opting to move abroad for employment, education, and business purposes, the Philippines has set up a sharp decline in population growth. We have already seen in multiple early units how a lot of Filipinos are emigrating outside to the rest of the world. Have more women immigrants than men. In fact, the sex ratio is 10:7 for women and men. And one can only wonder how it would impact the local Philippine society, because if so many women are migrating, obviously it will lead to a skewed sex ratio back home. Women are involved in professional nursing business, drivers, farmers, manager, accountants, etc. This is the Commission for Filipino Overseas in 2019. As per World Bank, the Philippines received 34 billion US dollars, ranked fourth globally after India, China, and Mexico. Inflow of remittances contributes about 10% to GDP. We have seen that in earlier chapters. Significant influence on Philippine cuisine and arts. And we have also seen from earlier units that how the diaspora starts influencing the culture in terms of cuisine, dressing styles, and so on and so forth, both in the host country as well as back home. And now today, with globalization and exchange of media, the influences are much faster in moving back and forth. In fact, in a lot of classes, when a lot of people ask about Indian culture and the influence of social media on the Indian culture, today with globalization, how the culture moves or how the media moves is extremely difficult to control. And we have also seen shutting down, banning, blocking really does not work. Overseas, Filipinos have introduced and popularized Philippine food, culinary traditions. Philippines art and culture have also spread through diasporic communities. In fact, I picked up this article on food. Here are the best Filipino restaurants in the United States. Then there was this article on the 25 best Filipino restaurants in the United States. And I think this is a New York Times article. Filipino food finds a place in the American mainstream. So obviously, the host countries are getting affected by the diaspora. Let's look at the Japanese diaspora, popularly known as the Nikkei people. Nikkei is borrowed from the Japanese word Nikkijin, referencing to people of Japanese ancestry who are living overseas. So there is something called a Meiji period, 1868 to 1912. Japanese immigrate to Philippines and Americans. They were to territories of Empire of Japan. Remember, there was an Empire of Japan during the period of Japanese colonial expansion. However, most of these immigrants repatriated to Japan after 45. In fact, Japan had a huge diaspora population in Hawaii when the Second World War happened, and they were in fact interned. There was a lot of hello, sir. Shlikana, what articles are we talking about? Thank God. There's a mail. Just a minute. Let me just reply. As I say in all classes, if you send me a mail to my mail ID, abhijapla13@.com, I can share the PPT with you. If you're looking at specific articles, you can also send me a mail. I can forward you those articles. I'm keeping a repository of the various news articles that I'm studying or I am coming across. And I also encourage all you guys. I am not on WhatsApp, unfortunately, and I don't use WhatsApp and I don't intend to. So I work by mail or I am on Telegram and Signal in case any one of you is there. But mail works fine. So if you send me a mail, I can forward you the PPT. And Kangat is can verify that I always reply. So as and when whoever Shrestha is also a perfect validate, she will validate that I always reply. So if you write to me, I can forward you the PPT and I can forward you the articles. And in fact, you should continuously share articles among yourself also, because this helps getting point of views, perspectives and point of views. Because there's so much happening and so many things are changing so fast, that's very important to keep sharing. There was a significant emigration to the territories of Japan. The word is called Gosei. Fifth generation is a Japanese diasporic term used in countries, particularly in North America, to specify great-great-grandchildren of Japanese immigrant, the Issei. So the first immigrants were called the Issei. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it right. Maybe the Japanese pronunciation might be different. The children of Issei are Nisai, the second generation, Sansai, the third, and their offspring are Yonsei. So the offspring of Yonsei will be Gosai. If again, as I said, I do not know the pronunciation, but I'm reading it literally from the English words. Okay, the earliest organized group of Japanese immigrants settled in Mexico in 1897. Today, the largest population, I wonder why. I think I should find out more. How did they reach Mexico? For what reason? Today, the largest population of Japanese live in United States, Canada, Brazil, and Peru. So there is a huge Japanese diaspora in South America, besides North America. In Europe, Britain is estimated to hold the largest Japanese immigrants. In Asia, also they are spread across, involved in engineering, academic. See, we at a particular time of many years back, Japanese was always associated with high tech, with great cars, with cameras. Remember, all cameras were Japanese, all electronics, cars, everything was Japanese. When subsequently others took over. I think during the 80s and 90s, anytime we talked about Japanese, we talked about high tech, we talked about extremely good engineering, extremely good craftsmanship. Japanese were known for that. So as per World Bank, remittances contribute to less than 1% of Japanese GDP. Japanese language, lifestyle, arts and craft, cuisine. Interestingly, before arrival in Japan, migrants have the facility to learn Japanese language from Japanese cultural centers located across the world. Japanese food like sushi are found widespread. Everybody knows about sushi across the world among Nikkei and local population across the world. And finally, we come to the Vietnamese diaspora, properly referred to it as overseas Vietnamese or Viet Kieu. Local Vietnamese language translates as Vietnamese travelers living overseas. So interestingly, if you see, even the diasporas, so there are overseas Chinese and this is overseas Vietnamese. Unlike China or Japan, Vietnam does not have a long history of overseas immigration. Since Vietnam was a French colony for a long time, France has the largest Vietnamese population outside of Vietnam. Okay, so Jaya is informing that Japanese were plantation laborers in Mexico. But how did they reach Mexico as plantation laborers? Were they indentured and taken, or how did they reach Mexico? Why not Sri Lanka? Jaya, any idea?
No, sir. I was learning some article about Mexico few months back.
Okay.
So the plantation development in Mexico as well as in India, Myanmar was that was the article about the plantations.
Okay.
So I learned that Japanese were also one of the plantation laborers in Mexico at that time.
Interesting.
It was in early 1900s, not exactly 1878 or 77. It was in early 1900s.
Okay, but again, the question is, how did they reach Mexico? I mean, there has to be a channel for reaching Mexico, because inevitably we have seen that migrants happen because there is already some migration or people out there, or somebody has engendered or pushed them there. For example, Indians were pushed into various parts of the world as indentured laborers. So,
yes, but I'm not aware like how they end up there. But I have read that Mexico's plantation, even Japanese were working.
so interestingly, I think I need to check this out, or anybody can check this out. And why did they reach Mexico? Because if it was plantation, then why Mexico only? Plantations are across. Why not Sri Lanka? Nevertheless, we can check this out. These are very interesting bits of information which needs to be found out. Just a minute, guys. There is just a second. I'm Vietnam was a French colony. In terms of assimilation, the Vietnamese people in France, this is supposedly a huge success, Vietnamese in France. And we are, mind you, they are using the term assimilation, not integration. So almost like the Vietnamese culture has been taken over by the French culture. While fully incorporating into the French culture, the French Vietnamese Viet are widely concentrated mainly in Paris and its surrounding. A 20-year-old war fought between North and South Vietnam. Including the US, neighboring China, Cambodia. So these are also a part of the East Asian diaspora, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand. We have not talked about them because the unit is talking about specifically these 5. As per the Vietnamese government, 5.3 million for 53 lakh Vietnamese diaspora live in 130 countries, contributed to economic development. In October 20, overseas Vietnamese had invested in 362 projects in foreign direct investment from 27 countries. Total investment US dollar 1.6, investment Vietnam is received US 71 billion remittance. So Vietnam is also a huge receiver of remittances. Modern cultural practices in Vietnam are a mix of East Asian cultures, a reflection of Chinese and Korean cultures. And obviously, cultures keep influencing each other. Now, this is a very interesting thing which we have seen on the global stage, something called Ao Dai. Again, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm literally speaking in English. Is a Vietnamese traditional clothing, now almost commonly worn by women, but can also be worn by men. We've seen a lot of heroines wearing this typical dress. It's a tight-fitting silk tunic worn over trousers. Ao translates as a shirt, and dai means long. In fact, we will see a lot of Hollywood, Bollywood heroines, men also wearing this typical hat. Is also a very Vietnamese thing. This conical hat, straw hat, is also a very symbolic, image of Vietnamese. So that is that. Let's sum up. So East Asia, geographical connotation referring to a sub-region of Asian continent covering China, Korea, Philippines, widely diverse in terms of cultural, people, ethnicity, language. Look at the Chinese, Korean, Filipino, Japanese, benefit their home economy through remittances, spread of soft power, through cultural and civilizational exchange in host countries. That's what this unit is talking about. And in fact, more than books, there are a lot of fiction which gets you to understand a lot of things. For example, there is this book which is called Your House Will Pay by Steve Cha. Cha tackles the conflicting tensions between Korean Americans and Black communities in Los Angeles. Again, when we look at diaspora and migration studies, a lot of fictional work gives a much better perspective than possibly, I don't say much better, but gives you a separate perspective besides that scholarly work. Because scholars will tend to look at a very, set pattern in terms of the research. Whereas a lot of these fictional works, say for example, All You Can Ever Know by Nicole Chung, searches for an identity that comes from being born into one culture and placed into another. These are very wide range, in terms of bestsellers, or I pick them up on the net in terms of how well they have been received, and gives you detailed account of how things happen on specific areas in specific regions. So what possibly could happen in Los Angeles may not be true in Washington. Similarly, we look at India, what might be true in Haryana may not work in Kerala, or what might work in Bengal may not work in Gujarat. So these perspectives add on to the, in terms of your sense of diaspora, your sense of migration, how the identities work out. And we have been in early units talking about various identities. We have looked at gender, we have looked at gender identity, we have looked at sexual identity, and all these interplay. Okay, I think I've reached the end. Okay. Oh, there is a lot of people in the class today. Hi all. Any questions that I can answer from this unit? Let me switch on my video. A lot of students today. Welcome to all. Welcome, guys. Hi, Namka. Namka, are you or
So there is some noise. I can't say, but we can't hear you properly. I don't know if others are also feeling the same way.
for other people also, guys?
Now it is fine, sir. Earlier there was a disturbance.
Is this fine now, Shrestha?
Yes, sir. Now it's fine.
Okay, okay. Okay, Anjali, good afternoon. Yes, Anjali, can you hear me now? Okay, it's quite possible. Listen, I have changed my normal place where I take my class because there is my neighborhood house is being demolished, and in the process of demolition, they have kind of put a major dent in my wall, and all kinds of things are happening in the neighborhood. But I guess the way the world is getting into a disturbance mode, I seem to be doing much better. I was reading about Libya and the kind of destruction, death and destruction which has happened out of flash floods in Libya, and it was kind of scary to read that article in Washington Post about how dams broke and a 23 feet wall of water swept a whole city into the ocean. It was crazy. Anyway, any questions from the unit,
So I do have one question.
please?
Not question, but actually a query in general, because we have been discussing things about these migrations for a long while.
Tell me.
I was wondering before I think USSR breaks down.
Hmm.
What was the nature of migration happening to USSR from Asia as well as countries like Vietnam? And because there was some kind of pull. Big, I mean, I'm not very aware about the whole uh, migration scene happening towards Russia at that time. And what is the current scenario? Also, that's what also I was interested in knowing from Asia.
See, inevitably, USSR was the full form was Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. That was the full form, and it comprises Ukraine, a whole lot of states which are now. Belarus was a part of USSR, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Armenia. These were all a part of USSR. And one needs to read, what happened in World War II and the subsequent changing of the political and other world order post World War II, because in fact, it was one major point of inflection for the world, where for example, Britain as a world power diminished, USSR emerged, USA as a world power emerged, and USSR came into being. And in fact, the World War II divided the spoils between US and USSR. And then the Cold War rivalry started. So more often than not, what I have heard needs to be read more. Most people from India, for example, used to travel to USSR for medical degrees, medical or engineering degrees. So there were a lot of students going from India, and I would suppose other parts of Asia for engineering and medicine. For example, if you have noticed, in Ukraine also, before the war started, there were almost 40,000 students studying medicine in Ukraine. Now, these were
Yes, so that was in the news reports as well.
Correct. That's what I'm talking. So think about the fact that we didn't know there was such a large number of students studying in Ukraine, which was part of USSR. So there are obviously students studying today, for example, in China, in Russia, they are studying. And inevitably, remember, migration happens for a better opportunity or for better lifestyle or for better job. It has to do from, anytime your situation is a particular A and you can do a 2A, you will migrate. So more often than not, there is not too much of, scholarly work in terms of people going into USSR, possibly because of the fact there was a certain amount of restriction, in terms of, this narration about democracy of the US and a sort of a dictatorship in USSR, though technically it was not a dictatorship. It was a communist kind of scenario like China. Now, we can classify China as a dictatorship, but it's a single party rule. That's the way it is. So again, which scholar defines what? So I have not come across too many scholarly work on migration from Asia to erstwhile USSR or to current Russia. But now that you've talked about, maybe I'll look at it, and if I'm able to find, I'll forward it to you, or I'll forward it to the whole group. Shrishta?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sir, could
Yeah.
I just I don't know whether it's the information is correct, but if I understand correctly, the USSR had subsidized rates on their study courses. So it could be a possible reason that a lot of Indians went there.
True. See, inevitably, if you see today also, forget USSR, if you see today, the reason why 40,000 students were studying medicine in Ukraine was that the cost of study of medicine in Ukraine, plus the travel and stay, was much lesser than what they were able to afford in the private medical colleges in India. So obviously there is all, see again, that's what we have been talking about in all these earlier erstwhile units. The reason why any person leaves home to go or migrate to a different place earlier used to be trade. But in trade also, you are trying to do better. So it's a basic human condition of trying to do better in terms of location. So if, for example, if there's a political strife, there's an uncertainty, there's poverty, there is disparity, you are not getting infrastructure, so people migrate from rural to urban because of that reason. People migrate from one country to another because of that reason. Migration typically happens because of all these reasons. So even when you say that the cost of those courses were less or they were subsidized, inevitably people found a better condition. And that is why they went out there.
Okay, yes, sir. That is true.
So, that's what, and sometimes you will see the basic conditions. In fact, when we go through multiple units, now we have done through 2 blocks and we have come on the 3rd block, a lot of things are repetitive. So when I'm preparing the presentation, I almost feel that, I've already spoken this, should I repeat it? But I pick up some salient points to keep repeating it, because that way we are able to understand the larger part. Otherwise, it misses out, and especially because in the class, sometimes new students come in, there is some tie back that I need to do. Because I cannot say that, there are some students who have been right from the beginning, I should skip out this. So I bring out something which is apparent, which is understood, which has been repeated and I yet repeated. Anjali?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes,
great.
Sir.
Any other question? Okay, in case there is none, as I said, yes, Sanjeev Kumar, please tell me.
Sir, I have a question pertaining to out of the context subject. Can I please?
If I can answer it right away, I will. Otherwise, I will request that I will, kind of prepare it and answer it in the next class. Whatever. Please ask.
Sir, no. Just for my knowledge, sir, I'm preparing a report on return migration of Jews, sir.
Return migration of?
Jews.
Okay. To Israel?
So, yeah, I have a doubt that there is a presence of cities in Karnataka. You might be aware, sir.
Siddhis, yes. We talked about Siddhis during one of the earlier classes.
Okay, I missed that class, sir. Okay. Sir, I'm just trying to find out whether there is any connection between the Jews and the Siddhis, because both are from same continent, but the race and their concept is different. While Jews wanted to return back to the Israel, there is no such talk from the Siddhis, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. You got my point, sir?
Yeah, I got your point. I got your point. See, one thing we need to understand the concept. See, with Jews, there's a very interesting thing which has happened. There is a common cultural thread going through the Jew, mindset or the narrative in terms of the Holocaust. So Jews typically fall under the victim diaspora. We had done some categorization of diaspora in terms of trade diaspora, victim diaspora, this diaspora, persecution diaspora.
Yes.
Jews fall under the victim diaspora. So there is this common thread about Jews and the victimization and the Holocaust, where 500,000 or 1,000,000 or more than 1,000,000 Jews were exterminated by the Nazi Germany. And somehow they've incorporated that particular thread across. And then there was this thread about the promised land and the setting up of Israel, and then the Israel and its security vis-a-vis the Arabs.
Sir.
So now when the Jews got Israel as a country, and then they and if you notice the conflict between Jews and Palestinians, and if you look at the global politics behind it, and a major lobbying power in the US to be able to get the US aligned with Israel rather than with the Palestine. In spite of that, in spite of the fact that in the news items we see a lot of times Israel seems to be doing to Palestinians what the Germans did to Jews. But gets Jews to, and because it's a smaller community worldwide, and because of Israel being the only country of Jews, there is this thing about going back. For the Africans, Africa is a huge continent, and Africans are divided into multiple beings. And if you again, we discussed this into class, and if you know, the whole modern human migration started out of Africa and spread throughout the world. So the whole world population has a bit of the African genes. So if you go and give your DNA, there would be a certain not percentage of African genes within you, because inevitably the stock came from Africa. And earlier theories was that the modern human being came from East Africa, but now subsequently that theory has also been debunked, because they said there were multiple centers of the origin of modern human beings in terms of evolution, being South Africa being one. There was other places besides East Africa. So maybe because of the split of the African, and again it has to do with identity. The Jews have a very closeted identity and are able to identify with the place, whereas Africa is a huge continent with multiple nationalities and identities, and that is the reason why. And then cities have got amalgamated to the Indian, they've got integrated into the Indian system.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
But at the same time, even the Jews have also integrated into the Indian system. Only the point is that they want to return back. Whereas cities,
somehow it has to do with identities. See, more often than not, how there are multiple identities at work at any moment of time, Sanjeev. So which identity overcomes the other identity? See, for example, today I have a sexual identity of a male. I have a gender identity. I have a nationality. I have other identities which are at play, which could be by surname. I'm a Punjabi. I live in Haryana, so there is a Haryanvi identity. There's a Punjabi identity. There are so many identities that I go parallelly. Now, at any moment of time, if one identity dominates other identities, then I go into that identity. So in Jews, I think in case of Jews and the World War II experience and the Holocaust and the promised land of Israel, that identity has become paramount and is able to overcome the other identities.
Sir. So to sum up, can we say that there is some connection between the two tribes, sir? I mean, the cities.
Between the Jews and the cities, I haven't come across any. Does anybody know if there's a connection between Jews and cities? I don't. They are two separate things.
Yes, sir. There is no paper, no such kind of study also made actually.
But
and I didn't find any. Paper in net or anywhere, sir.
No, but Siddhis are of African descent. They are not of the Jewish descent at all.
Yes, sir. But both are from the same continent, no, sir.
No, see, Israel is much more in the area of the Middle East. In fact, it is towards the Mediterranean. There is no connection.
Okay.
You know, it's something like this. I can say that Chinese, Koreans, and Indians are Asians, but there is no continuity,
Yes, I got you.
no cultural, connection. There is no way we can identify with each other. In fact, in the US system, Indians are not Asians. Asians typically are Chinese, Koreans, Japanese. Indians are Indians. Indians are in fact more related to Pakistanis,
Yes.
Indian Pakistanis. Indians are not classified as Asians at all.
Okay.
If you see any American things, they don't categorize Indians as Asians, even though we are a part of Asia.
Yeah.
So
got your point.
we are categorized more as South Asia, SARC region, but we are not categorized with Chinese and Asian. So Siddhis and Jews cannot, have no connection. That way.
Okay.
Sanjeev?
Sir, I am unaware of it. Actually, I'm having very less knowledge on geography.
Perfectly fine. See, again, the fact is there is so much out there, so much of information in terms of how this migration works, how these diaspora formations happen, how the disruptions are happening, how the identities are coming in. That's what we are trying to unravel in this course as well as in these units.
Sir.
Sanjeev?
Sir, thank you, sir.
Okay. So in case if there is none, then great meeting you. Have a nice weekend. And we will ask. Yes, Veera.
Okay, sir. Only 1 minute. I just want to
tell me.
you. The Siddhi related thing my friend told, right?
Yeah.
Basically, what happened here? Last time, BJP government has given one MLC ticket for the Siddhi group persons in Karnataka.
Okay.
That is at that time, he is the first African Siddhi person. Of course, he is Indian. He got the MLA. MLC, right? MLA direct elections. In Karnataka, MLC is there. We can nominate. We can nominate. He one first person of the
who was nominated.
Siddhi, who is nominated to Karnataka Assembly as a MLC.
Okay.
I have seen that one. That is the first time you told, right? Naturalization towards the political rights government has given.
Veera, yes, obviously, remember when politics comes into play, then there is an identity politics which works out. And we had talked about the fact that Siddhis actually, there was this African kingdom in Bengal for some period of time when they moved and they settled in various places.
Yes, especially in Karnataka, because I am staying in Bangalore, right? I can easily find out.
Okay.
Western Ghats, most of their tribes, their related tribes are very significant amount of persons are there. They are staying there.
Would be. Because inevitably when we see the world map, when we see the world map and when we see the migration from Africa, inevitably the migration happened along the coast.
Oh, yes,
so
yes.
That is why you will see all these tribals. Why do you think there are so many tribals in Andaman? Because that's how the migration happened.
Yes. Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys have a nice weekend, and I'll meet you next Saturday with the next set of Asian diaspora. We will be talking about the South Asian diaspora, and we'll take it on from there. And Shrestha, I will answer your question next time.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Bye-bye then.